The sound isn't a horn. It's an engine straining in low gear, and the smell isn't from the Atlantic forest. It's from overheated brake linings. After kilometers of continuous descent on the BR-277, every curve of the Serra do Mar takes its toll. Heavy trucks lose speed, lines form, and time slips away. And when something goes wrong, there's no alternative route. The corridor simply comes to a halt. Built at the end of the 1960s, this highway was created to cross the mountains and connect the coast to the interior of Paraná. At the time, it was an engineering feat. Today, it operates under pressure that the designers never imagined. Now, this limit has started to be extended. A new cycle of investment is underway on the BR-277 as part of the current highway concession model in Paraná. The contract provides for about 10.8 billion reais in expansion and improvement works. In addition, more than 6 billion reais are allocated to the operation and maintenance of the highway over 30 years. A significant part of this package is made possible by Banco Nacional de Desenvolvimento Econômico e Social Financing in the amount of 6.4 billion reais. Stay with us for the next few minutes and learn all the details of this attempt to update. Fully operational, one of the most strategic highways in the south of Brazil, known as the Great Road. The BR-277 cuts across Paraná from east to west for more than 730 kilometers, connecting the port of Paranaguá on the Atlantic to the International Friendship Bridge in Foz do Iguaçu. It is one of the few federal highways entirely within Paraná. In the eastern stretch between Curitiba and the coast, the highway crosses the Serra do Mar over approximately 80 to 90 kilometers, a segment that has always been treated as a separate chapter in Brazilian road engineering. In fact, it is exactly in this corridor that the current capacity expansion package is concentrated. About 81 kilometers already duplicated between Curitiba and Paranaguá will receive additional lanes, frontage roads, and structural reinforcements. The first stage targets the busiest section, between kilometers 67 and 83 with 31.8 kilometers of third lanes. In addition to bike lanes, a pedestrian overpass, retaining walls, and widening of entrances. Technical point: of course, increasing capacity without redesigning the mountain, respecting environmental, urban, and operational limits. But this highway was never just local. It was designed as an axis of economic integration, and that helps to understand why the project became so big so quickly. Before it became a traffic jam, the BR-277 has been a synonym for boldness since the mid-20th century. The bottleneck between the port of Paranaguá and the capital was already limiting the development of Paraná. The old Graciosa Road could no longer handle the volume of cargo and passengers, while the railway was operating near its limit. Economic growth was starting to hit the wall of the Serra do Mar. The construction of BR-277 represented a technical breakthrough, a modern route for its time, built under severe terrain conditions, frequent rains, and logistical isolation. When it became operational, the highway changed the dynamics of the state. Access to the port became more regular. The coast expanded economically, and the corridor began to support the industrial, agricultural, and tourism growth of Paraná. Decades later, history repeats itself, but now on a different scale. The port keeps breaking records, the trucks are getting bigger and heavier, and Curitiba has grown over the highway access points, and urban traffic started to mix with long-distance flow. In Serra do Mar, any difference in speed becomes a bottleneck. If you've ever been there, you know, just one slow truck is enough to turn smooth traffic into a line. The new concession model tries to correct this historical gap. The BR-277 becomes a priority axis, now under the responsibility of EPR Litoral Pioneiro, with mandatory targets for expansion, safety, and operational performance. But how can all this be done without, let's say, shutting down one of the country's main highways? In practice, the tripling of BR-277 is not a project that starts from scratch. It takes place on a highway that's already operating near its limit, where heavy traffic, metropolitan commutes, and tourist flow all share the same corridor. That's why the first challenge isn't about concrete, but about operations, carrying out major interventions without interrupting the road's functioning. Instead of a large, isolated construction site, what is set up is a sequence of work fronts that move forward along sections with progressive signage. Temporary lane changes and, when necessary, interventions concentrated during periods of lower traffic flow. Phase 1 focuses efforts where the bottleneck is most sensitive. The section runs between kilometer 83 and 67 in both directions, connecting the area around Jardim Botânico in Curitiba to the Borda do Campo region in São José dos Pinhais. Here, the logic is straightforward: to implement third lanes to reduce the difference in speeds, especially when trucks are forced to use lower gears and disrupt the flow of traffic. In terms of physical delivery, this stage includes 31.8 kilometers of additional lanes. But the benefit doesn't come alone. It's supported by a set of complementary interventions that are essential for the increased capacity to be maintained in daily use. In parallel, the additional lanes include 3.2 kilometers of frontage roads, which play a traffic engineering role just as crucial as the main roadway. In urban and metropolitan areas, this segregation is fundamental without the frontage roads. Part of the benefit of the third lane is lost due to frequent interferences, which pull the average speed down. It's not just about adding a lane, but about requalifying the way the highway connects to its surroundings. The project also incorporates a component that doesn't always appear when talking about tripling, but that changes the social impact of the project: infrastructure for non-motorized users. The initial stage includes 14.65 kilometers of bike lanes and a footbridge, elements that increase safety in areas with pedestrian and cyclist traffic. In a high-traffic corridor, these structures act as layers of protection, reducing improvisation, risky crossings, and conflict points. Especially in a construction scenario where users' attention tends to fluctuate. Expanding capacity and creating connections, however, requires dealing with the physical stability of the corridor. That's why one of the technical pillars of the package is the implementation of 20 retaining structures. In a territory with complex terrain and frequent rainfall, retaining structures are not an addition. They are a condition for feasibility. They act preventively against risks and slope instability and erosive processes, ensuring that the route remains safe, drained, and stable during and after the interventions. In this context, another decisive front comes in: the widening of 15 bridges and viaducts. This point usually marks the difference between a project that only distributes lanes and another that actually changes the highway's cross-section. In fact, there's no point in adding third lanes over long stretches if bridges and viaducts continue to act as bottlenecks. By widening these structures, the capacity is no longer limited to certain points and becomes continuous. This reduces the accordion effect, where traffic speeds up and then gets compressed again at fixed points. Active safety also receives specific attention in direct dialogue with the characteristics of the Curitiba coastal corridor. One example is the planned new escape area at kilometer 46, in a section with a critical descent and a sharp curve, designed as a damage mitigation resource in cases of brake failure. In addition, lighting will be installed in the most winding section of Serra do Mar, increasing visibility in recurring conditions of rain and fog. In the end, it's important to understand that this initial stage represents just one step within a broader horizon. The announced expectation is to complete Phase 1 by February 2027, and from there, move forward with the tripling along the approximately 81 kilometers already duplicated up to the entrance of Paraná. The expected delivery of this stage is by 2031, except for specific areas and restrictions. This means that the intervention should be understood not as a single project, but as a phased process. First, unlock the busiest and most urban section, then extend the improvements along the corridor, with new marginal overpasses in urban areas and safety adjustments at the most critical points. In summary, the tripling materializes as engineering in motion. Capacity, safety, and reorganization of access points move forward together while the highway continues to operate. Because on BR-277, stopping the flow simply isn't an option. To understand the real scale of the intervention on BR-277, it's necessary to translate technical numbers into everyday terms. The contract provides for about $10.8 billion in construction works. Considering an average value of $80,000 per compact car, this amount is equivalent to buying approximately 135,000 vehicles, a continuous line that would connect Curitiba to Porto Alegre. In the real estate market, assuming units costing 600,000 reais, the same amount would allow for the construction of approximately 18,000 medium standard apartments, enough to form an entire city. In healthcare, the numbers vary more depending on the standard. A fully equipped medium-sized hospital can cost hundreds of millions of reais. At this scale, the investment in works on the BR-277 is equivalent to the construction of dozens of hospital units in terms of physical size. The package includes 350 kilometers of duplications and 138 kilometers of additional lanes, a mileage comparable to the distance between Curitiba and the city of São Paulo via BR-116. The difference is that here, each kilometer passes through established urban areas on mountain slopes and environmentally sensitive zones. It's not just a big project, it's a structural investment where each area needs to provide flow, predictability, and risk reduction. With the reduction of BR-277, Paraná reduces a systemic risk. Less congestion means lower logistics costs, greater industrial competitiveness, and more predictability in the flow of cargo that depends on the port of Paranaguá. This even includes exports from Paraguay, which use this corridor as an exit to the Atlantic. The metropolitan region of Curitiba gains smoother traffic flow, and the coast gains more regular supply. The municipalities along the route receive ISS tax transfers and now have permanent medical and mechanical services. More than just speed, the highway now offers reliability, an invisible but decisive asset for modern production chains. The BR-277 has always been more than just a road. It was a frontier, a technical achievement, and a driver of development. Today, it faces the same challenge as in other times, keeping up with the growth that the highway itself helped create. The so-called tripling doesn't promise miracles, but it applies method, engineering, and scale to a historical problem. And sometimes that's exactly what turns a chronic bottleneck into functional infrastructure. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. What do you think about the tripling of the BR-277? Do you think that finishing it by 2031 would take too long, or is it the right amount of time considering the size of the project? Leave your opinion in the comments. I'll be happy to read all of them. I'll stop here for now. A big hug and see you in the next video.